Welcome to the Open to Hope Show in partnership with the Soaring Spirits Foundation. The Soaring Spirits was founded by Michelle Neff Hernandez, a great friend of ours, and we are going to be doing a show on I'm Too Young to Be a Widow today, right, Heidi?
Absolutely, and I am the co-host, Dr. Heidi Horsley. Hi, Mom.
Hi, it's great to have you on as my co-host today.
I'm excited, and like you said, we are going to do a show called Too Young to Be a Widow. We are going to interview 4 widows, 4 women that were widowed young and that have children, and I'm looking forward to the show and to hear what they have to say.
Absolutely. Well, let me introduce our 4 ladies sitting over here. Our first one is Michelle Miller. Hi, Michelle. Hi. And then we've got Patty Behrens. Hi, Patty.
Hi.
And Melissa Martinez. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
And then we've got Donna Gilmore. Hi, Donna.
Hi.
And also we're going to have V sing Surrender on our show.
Yes, and she's got a beautiful voice. I'm excited to hear her at the end of the show.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun. Well, let's start out with you, Michelle.
Yes, and let me talk a little bit about Michelle first, because I want to give her a little bit of a shout out, because first of all, I think she's hysterical. She's very blunt, upfront, and real about her loss, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Because so often people don't really tell it like it is.
That is true. Yeah.
And when you're early on in your grief, you need to hear that, hey, I'm not alone. What I'm going through is not abnormal. I'm not crazy. I'm not strange. And you wrote a book which kind of summarizes the kind of person that you are. It's called Boys, Booze, and Bathroom Floors, 46 Tales About the Collision of Suicide, Grief, and Dating.
Yes, very blunt.
So welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. Now we've got a picture of your husband standing by the car. What was his name?
His name was John.
John. And John's the one that got you off on this whole journey, right?
Yes, yes. My journey began about 3 years ago when he died by suicide when I was 31 years old.
Wow. And you have kids, and they were small at the time, right?
Yes, my son was 7 and my daughter was she's 14 now. She was 11 then.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what got you into writing books? It's just been 3 years, so it's not a huge...
I've always been a writer ever since I could pick up a pencil. I was always in writing contests, always journaled and things like that. And as soon as my husband died, my natural reaction, as strange as that sounds, is to online date. I just started dating. And when I come home from those dates, I would journal about them. They were awful. It is dating in your 30s as a widow in San Diego is awful. So I would write these journal entries, and then I would talk about them on my social media, these bad dates, and people would say, put it in a book, put it in a book. And I thought, you know what, there really is no, that I have come across early books about grief. There's a lot of like retrospective books,
right.
20 years, where people are very healthy, and I was not healthy those first few years. So that's how the book came to be. I was already journaling, and then I just kind of put all of my bad dates into a book and how those dates correlated with the stage of grief that I was in at that time.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. And I know you said as soon as you would drop the widow card, that
The widow bomb.
The widow bomb.
Yes, it is a bomb.
I love that you call it that.
It is the widow bomb.
And it was because why do you call it the widow bomb?
Because the looks on the men's faces when you're on dates kind of explode when you you say they see you, and they assume because you're young, maybe you're divorced or you're still single, and in that first date conversation, it would always come back to what do you do for a living, or oh, where are your children? Are they with their dad? And I would say no, and it would always come back to the widow, and I would say, well, I'm a widow, but it's okay, we don't have to talk about it, and they would just be like, and then they kind of like fumble around, and I've had men leave in the middle of dates because of it, and not just men. In general conversation, when I meet people, they're very shocked.
Now, how about the word widow? We have people tell us, they hate that word.
It does have a negative. I didn't really identify as a widow for the first few years. I would just say my husband is deceased, but the word widow, yeah, it does. Can you think of maybe an 85-year-old woman all dressed in black or something? You certainly don't think of like young, beautiful women, out dating and raising children to be widowed.
Right.
Right. What do you think is the most difficult thing, or what was for you about being young with children and widowed?
Oh, you said it right, the children.
Okay.
That was the most, it's still hard for me to talk about. That is the most difficult because I'm not a single parent, I'm an only parent.
Yeah.
All the responsibility is on me, every decision, and that pressure in addition to grief is, it's unexplainable.
Wow. I want to get, let's bring in the other ladies and let's get some cross-pollination about this, because I'm going to be interested in some of your thoughts on dating and, and all the
And
the
let's
kinds of
talk
things.
about how they all get to know each other a little bit, too.
Yeah, yeah.
So we are going to be talking with Patty Burns, who is right here, and next to her is Melissa Martinez, and then on our end is Gloria Gilmore. And I had to figure out how they all knew each other at the beginning, so I was getting confused, and so I'm hoping to get this right. So they all came together in a group called Gals in Growth, and it was a widows group, and it was run by Patty, who is a marriage and family therapist. Is that, am I right?
Yes.
Okay. And then Patty, you founded Caring Connections, which is a ministry.
Right, correct.
Okay, and this all, it helps widows, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well, and the Gals in Growth, that's a young widows, and I wasn't a therapist back then.
Okay.
Oh, you weren't when you
No,
started. Now
so
this
this
was
was
when you
years
were,
ago.
We've got a picture of your husband.
Yes.
And
I was widowed 17 years ago.
okay.
And so, you know, just like Michelle was saying, you know, being alone, you don't know others either. There aren't others, or you were saying too, that
Right.
are widowed in your age group. And so I did not know a soul. And being a solo parent of children ages 7, 12, and 14.
Wow.
So I did form a widows group, a young widows group. I kind of reached out and tried to find some young widows a couple years after.
And how did you find them? On the internet or?
You know, they kind of found me a little bit.
Okay.
Because people that I knew, I mean, from my son's school, you know, mom had a sister-in-law that was widowed recently and got her in connection with me. And my daughter's school, someone on her swim team knew someone, and they just,
Okay,
I
word
got
of
them
mouth.
together. And I just got these gals together that didn't know each other, invited them. We met at a home and began just meeting monthly.
Let's talk a little bit about your husband, and hopefully we'll see a picture of him up on and a picture of you with your kids. So talk about him a little bit and his name. And
We were on a family vacation back east, so we had arrived 3 days. We were in Boston. We were going to go on a 3-week trip. And so we were first staying with a friend of his who took us out water skiing on his boat. And so we were out there. And fortunately, it was just myself. My husband was water skiing, and his friend was driving the boat. And the children were off on a little island with the other mom. And he fell, thought it was an accident. I did the attempted rescue and brought him in and did CPR, but he died.
And we've got a picture of him up there. We had one up, and then one of you with the kids, if we
Right,
get
yes,
that up.
yes, yes.
Okay, so, and then let's talk to Melissa about your, how did you meet Patty, and how did that all happen?
Well, she sort of found me, actually. I was about probably 2 years after my husband had died, and I was ready to move his things out of the closet, and I finally accepted that his death was real. And I had looked into getting a professional organizer at the house, and this woman came, and she happened to know about Care Connections and Patty, so that was my way in.
And you know, I love something that you just said, Melissa. At year 2, you finally wrapped your arms around the fact that it was real and that it was permanent, and I think that is so normal. I mean, I know when my brother died, I really couldn't wrap my arms around it and believe that it was permanent and it was real. It felt so unreal for a long time.
Right, and for me, I had 2 newborns at the time my husband died. So I was.
You had twins, right?
I had twins, yes.
Wow.
So they were 2 weeks old when he passed away of cancer. So I mean, I sort of say that they procrastinated my grief a little bit because I was just in survival mode. It was all about them.
That makes sense.
So it took me a while to process it. I mean, my mind knew that he had passed, but my heart was still connected. And so finally, they came on the same plank, and I was like, okay. He's gone. He's not ever coming back. This is it. I accepted it. I was ready to move forward.
Now, was he in the fire department?
Yes,
or?
he was in the San Jose Fire Department. Actually, he was a fire captain.
Yeah.
He was 41 years. Yeah.
And let's get to you, Dorina.
Yeah, I actually met Patty through our church, through the Gals in Growth group. I was invited after my husband died. And he died in 2014. He was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma cancer in May of that year, and then he passed away in September.
And you're an author and a blogger too, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and what do you do? Tell us a little bit about that.
So my background is in writing. I started out as a newspaper reporter, and then for the years of raising my kids, I have 3 daughters. I started venturing into writing children's books. So I have 3 children's books that are published. And then, of course, with my grief journey, kind of like Michelle said, it was very natural for me to start writing. And that was part of, you might say, my therapy or my processing of my grief. And there were a few blogs that I started writing for because just of the way that we were involved in our local community, people are interested in hearing about how I was processing my grief. So now I'm devoting most of my writing time to writing about grief and navigating grief as a mom.
And your husband, we've got a picture of him with his bicycle helmet on, so he was a bicycler too.
He was an athlete for sure, and he had just done a triathlon that year, a half Ironman, so that's the picture that you have. And he was real involved with the CrossFit community as well.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. So, all right, young widows, tough. What have you got to let people know about that?
Reach out. And that's the hardest thing, I think, is to say you need help when you need it. And just encourage those around you that just to show up. Don't say, if you ever need anything, give me a call. No, just show up and be there. And I mean, it could just be as much as watching your kids, so the moms can get away for a little bit and just have some breathing time on their own. But yeah, just a community reaching out for sure.
Get into community. And that's where, you know, the Founding of Care Connections, they provide work days once a month to go help widows at their homes.
I love that.
A lot of people will say, call me if you need anything. But they're not proactive in calling you. So, I mean, as Care Connections, we do reach out and say, you need anything done next month? Do you need something?
And so you just send people into the homes to help.
Yes,
I love that. You roll up your sleeves and do what needs to be done. That's great.
Absolutely, yes.
That is so key.
Care Connections helped me when I was moving, and you sent probably a dozen people that helped. And that was a huge thing for me because, you know, obviously just the dance of trying to move new things with the kids, but then also I had to sort through all of my husband's things. So that month of sorting through things and sorting through memories was really difficult for me, and I was so grateful for that group of people. And I would have never called all those people to come, but they came with such joy and willingness to help. It was awesome.
Well, and you know, I worked with 9/11 widows for 10 years, and you think, okay, when you lose your husband, you're losing some of the guys that do the heavy lifting.
Yes.
And they said some of the things that people could do for them were, I mean, I live in New York, so we get a lot of snow. Shoveling their driveway, you know, going in and cutting their lawn. So those kind of things that traditionally a lot of guys do, to go in and help with that kind of stuff too. What about you, Michelle? Do you have any thoughts on this?
I completely agree with all of that, absolutely. I think what I always tell people with new widows is to just be very kind to yourself. You are going through something very life-altering, and just to be kind to yourself and to really just validate what you're going through and really feel if you are angry, be angry. You don't need to justify it to anyone. If you are, you know, drunk on a Tuesday morning, like sometimes that is okay when you're a young widow. I mean, just be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can, especially young widows with children and careers and things like that. Just be kind.
What about the dating scene? Let's get to the real good stuff, huh?
We were all just talking about this before we came on about dating.
Who wants to start?
Michelle. Okay, I'll
You
start.
got
I
it, girl.
published a whole book about the awful dating scene. Let me think. It is challenging. It happens differently for everyone. Some people are prepared to date 6 months after the fact. Some people wait years and years. There's no right or wrong. I think when I started seriously dating, the first few years I was just randomly dating to take my mind off of things. But when I seriously started dating, you're not the same person you were the first time you married. And so you're not going to be attracted necessarily to the same type of person. So I think date a lot of variety, and online dating makes that easy. Date a large variety of men until you find
Somebody tells
someone
me
that
my
works with.
daughter's not a widow, but she's divorced, and she said, oh, you have to make sure you just go for coffee.
Yes. Never meet for a meal the first date, because like you 5 minutes into it could just be like, oh my God. So you meet for coffee, you meet for a cocktail. have an excuse to leave. I always have an excuse where I'm just like, okay, well, it's nice to meet you, but 45 minutes, I have to get back to the kids.
Well, I
So
don't,
you never
I don't know about here, but I know in New York they have speed dating.
Yes, I've
Where
done
you
that.
meet somebody and within a few minutes you're moving to the next table.
Excellent
and you
idea.
can tell pretty quickly, right, if you're
I think
want it to
attraction.
go longer or not.
I think chemistry and attraction. I think if someone walks in, you can tell if you like them right away, and vice versa. So dates don't need to be longer than 5 minutes.
Our friend Carol Scabelli, who's a comedian who has written a book, says, make sure you don't have pictures in the bedroom of your husband.
Yeah. If you're going to take them to the bedroom.
Yeah. I was dating with my wedding ring on a few months ago, and I just didn't care. It was like, deal with it or not. I put widowed on my online dating profile, and I've been dating a really nice man for the last few months, and he's completely fine with my
And I
wedding
think
ring.
somebody's remarried, right?
Yes.
How did that all happen?
Well, I have kind of a unique story. I was definitely not ready for dating, but just got reconnected with a single friend who is actually one of my late husband's really good friends.
Wow.
And my late husband and I were in charge of a nonprofit organization, so he was one of our supporters through the years, and so he knew my family really well. And it turned out that he was moving back to California just a few months after my husband's funeral. So we just kind of rekindled our friendship. Like I said, I was definitely not ready for dating or looking for that at that point, but I could just feel that in my spirit.
Yeah.
That there was something different about our relationship, and he had a real heart for widows that just had grown in him through his church and just through some things as he was living out in Maryland. So I saw that in him, and that was something as a friend that I had never, seen before. But that was something for sure I was
Now
attracted
that's
to.
after you came back after a few months. So even though you got to know him, started to know him after only a few months after your husband died, right?
Well,
Get
I had known
reconnected.
him for 12 years before
But
that.
I know, but the
in
point
that
I want to make
context,
is there's
yes.
no, this idea
frame.
like,
Absolutely.
whoa. I
Time
remember
frame.
my father-in-law started dating somebody who was a relative of his, and it was very shocking to certain
distant
people are like,
relative.
whoa, you're not ready for this, you can't do that.
But yeah, there
know.
is there is something about I was picking up on that too when Michelle said whatever time frame works for you, because there's a lot of judgment out there.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, okay, wait a minute. When did your husband die and when did you start dating? And it's like, why why does it matter when you start dating? It's not going to bring your husband back either way. I mean,
That's a
it's
really
interesting
good
how
point.
people judge.
I was worried
guys
about
find
that
that?
too. I
Okay.
think because I had kids,
Right.
so I didn't really go public about it until 6 months after my husband's funeral, which some people probably would judge and say that was too soon. But I wanted to be really sure in my heart, and I didn't want my kids to have to deal with people's judgment.
Right.
That was my
And
biggest
I would
concern.
imagine this. You tell me if I'm wrong. You're more concerned about when your children are going to meet people and introducing them.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you don't want to get them excited about what might happen when maybe nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Definitely.
So what about your friends that don't want you to go to dinner with them?
Oh,
Did you have
mean
any of that
losing-
happen?
Losing your couple friends when
Yeah.
you lose your husband? Oh yeah. You don't just lose your husband when they pass away. Your kids lose a father. You lose your confidant, your dream maker. You lose
Your best friend.
so much. Your best friend, and you also lose your couple friends. You can lose their family as well
Yeah.
when they pass away. There's so much loss with it.
Wow.
A little jealousy there, a little bit worried about those single women around there?
Oh yeah, that's happened too.
Yeah, if the husband's helping you out or something in that, and
And if you're dating and you're single, you might want to show a little cleavage or whatever, and really, seriously,
Yeah,
right?
and now all of a sudden you're the enemy. You used to be part of that friend group.
Right, and I want to
now-
be cute and fun and sexy.
And now they
meet
assume that you're
people.
widowed, and so you want to come after their husband.
You're-
Right.
Yeah.
well, on the other hand, I was going to mention I was kind of judged the other way because I didn't date.
Okay,
I was
that's
like, well, when are you
interesting.
going to start dating? How come you're not dating yet? And even someone, people tried to set me up. Well,
Yeah.
so I gave him your phone number. I said, I'm not dating.
Right,
And
exactly.
for me, that was my choice at the time.
Yeah.
I had 3 children that were at
Yeah.
3 different schools in 3 different sports.
Yeah.
I did not have time. And if I had time, guess what? I did not want to go out.
And I hear that a lot.
And I did remarry. I've been remarried now, but that was through someone who joined Care Connections. And I got to know as a friend, for a couple years. And so in the 3rd year,
Now, how long did you wait after your husband died before you remarried?
it was 7.5 years.
Okay, and then you remarried shortly after, and you're not married yet, right?
No, I
And
just
you're not
actually
married
started
yet.
dating.
And you just
I'm
started
going
dating.
5 years into it, yeah. For me, it was, you know, the kids first. I mean, I had to raise my daughters, and I had my son at the time too, who's now 13, but he was 8 at the time. And I had to go through stages of really identifying who I am again, because I was caught up in this mode. I am just a mom, and that's so overwhelming. But so it took time for me. I mean, I had to go after accepting. It was forgiving others who left me when I thought they'd be by my side through the journey, forgiving the doctor who missed the diagnosis. I mean, I really had to forgive so I can move forward. And after the forgiveness came the gratitude. I was so thankful for having such a blessed man in my life, and a wonderful father figure, and a great husband. And then finally I was like, okay, who am I without him?
Well, this is interesting because in the 9/11 research study we did, and we did it through Columbia University, we found that it took the widows 7 years to feel fully comfortable in their new identity.
Wow.
Wow,
I believe it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to, before we close the show, I want to go around and have each of you give your best piece of advice. It can be funny advice or whatever. If you want to give 2 pieces, you're serious and you're funny, you can go for it. And let's start with you.
Wow, okay. Well, I think probably my most important advice that I always share with people, and it has to do with mothering. And for me, it was really important that I let all 3 of my daughters, who are unique in personality and in their different ages, to really grieve the way that they needed to grieve. And I wanted to be a mom who created a safe space for that to happen. So that would be my encouragement to other moms, is that you don't have to have the perfect way to do things. You don't have to say the perfect things to them. You don't have to shut down the crying or shut down the bad behavior if that comes, but just creating a space where it's safe to really process their feelings. And I know, you know, now that we're 3 years out, that I see just so much growth and maturity in my kids and resilience that they've gained. They feel comfortable talking about their dad's death at school, with their friends, at church. And I don't think that's something I intentionally did, but I saw that kind of happen because of creating that safe space.
I would say find out who you are again, who you want to be as well. And you don't have to rush into the dating scene. You can date yourself, and that's really, really important. Get to know yourself, get out and do things. Don't think you have to have a partner, but go out and be confident and do it on your own. Find out what you like. That's good.
Those are both great. I would concur with those, but I would also say community. Get connected. Because I wish I would have had, you know, it's been 17 years, that advice, but getting connected with others that are in your similar situation, young widows that are raising kids, that you can encourage one another and get help.
So, and Patty, with that in mind, how do people find your organization?
Well, they can look online. It's Care Connections, griefhelp.com.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
And I would just say, when your husband dies, die right along with him. Surrender completely to the grief, and then, like they were talking about, rebuild. Don't expect to be the same. Don't put any expectations on yourself. Just die right along with him.
Wow.
Well, one of the things I would say too to you all is please look into Soaring Spirits too, because they have a really strong website where you can connect up with people and do a lot of blogging and that kind of thing. And you're going to be presenting there, right? At Michelle's
Yes,
program
for
in
Camp Widow,
San Diego, for Camp Widow. So there are lots of connections and different things that you can do together. And have you got one tip, each of you, on widows and how the kids, related to the kids? Just one quick thing you can tell people, because I know there's a big concern about that.
Complete and total honesty at an age-appropriate level, and don't expect it to be one huge conversation. Discuss with them their entire lives in an honest and upfront manner.
Always good not to trap him in the car, too.
Right?
This is the perfect time. You're on our way to school. Let's talk
Right.
about
Always
this.
on their level. Like, you know, if they're playing, I talk to my son when he's playing video games, because that's on his, he's comfortable. So, yeah, like you were saying, know your kids and allow them to grieve however they want.
And I would concur with that too, but ongoing, because they grieve differently at different developmental stages. So you have to, like someone say, oh, they're doing great. I said, well, they still will have some grief as they go on throughout their childhood
Yes.
and even into adulthood.
Yes.
So just be aware and be open to that.
And keep the memory alive
Yes.
of their father.
Yeah.
I'll continue to talk about him and what he was like and the things that happened. So it's really important.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Melissa was saying too. I think the holidays and the anniversaries are oftentimes really difficult for families, and for our family, we have chosen to make those times to really celebrate their dad. So like we talk about his heaveniversary, which is the day that he died, and I let my kids choose to do special things. And that has kind of shifted, I think, the energy in our home, that we don't dread anniversaries so much. So I would just encourage moms and even other family members to just march into that instead of trying to avoid it. I think we had some early holidays that were super awkward because everyone was trying to recalibrate and not sure what to say. And the more I was willing to say, okay, we're gonna go do a workout because that's what your dad would have loved for us to do, or we're gonna go for a run, or we're gonna do an art project to celebrate, then that kind of helped us just enter in together as a family.
Well, I want to thank you guys all for being on the show today. It's been
Thank you.
really
Yes, thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
thank you.
there's so much.
You are great examples of how you've transformed your life after loss. So thank you, and given a lot of people out there hope.
Yeah, and it's fun, isn't it? Is life good?
Life is good.
Yeah, life is good.
Life is good. Life is fun, and keep out there for the widows and keep that energy up, right?
Absolutely, because at first, I'm sure, it's not fun.
No.
So for those of you out there that are newly bereaved, knowing that at some point, this is what your future looks like.
Absolutely.
And it's a great thing to know that.
Absolutely. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours and all these ladies until you find it again. And now we want to thank you for watching the Open to Hope show today. And we are going to hear from V. And V is a good friend of Michelle's. And she's brought her here to sing for us. And she has an album called Kaleidoscope. And she is going to sing Surrender for us. And again, thanks for watching our show today. Please tell your friends all about Open to Hope, and God bless.
One more shot to break me down. One more balloon to pop before I hit the ground. Even when I have it all, I don't have you. So much to say, but no one to say it to.